Here we go then, a bit of wonderful water effects in the background. Come out to St John's, to the wonderful wildlife garden at St John's. Always a joy to have a little paddle around here, as we often have done over the years on various things on Manx Radio, and today on the podcast for Mannimal. We've come here not to actually look at the plants, wonderful though they are, but perhaps look at something which a lot of gardeners don't necessarily like to see in their garden too often. Slugs. I thought it'd be a perfect one for the Mannimal podcast, and if you're thinking slugs, there's only one woman to go slugging with, and that's Dawn. And have you been passionate about slugs for a while?
They've sort of grown on me, if you could say a slug can grow on you. Basically, when I was working at the Wildlife Trust, Tim Graham, the then CEO, recognised that there was a big hole in our knowledge of the invertebrates out there. And it came up, would someone go on a slug course? And me being me, very enthusiastic, went, yes, I'm going to do it. So that's how it happened.
I love it. And you have become something of a sort of slug enthusiast now. You're probably the only woman I know, at least on the Isle of Man. There might be more out there somewhere along the line, I just don't know them, who genuinely you wave a flag for the humble slug.
I certainly do, because they're really underrated in our ecosystems. They're really important. Everyone thinks of them as a garden pest, but actually there's slugs out there that eat other slugs, and they have a fantastic method of tracking them down. They follow the slime of the trunk before and slowly track them down. It must be one hell of a chase to watch. And then there's a lot of them do eat dead plant matter, so they're the great clean-up crew, really. And the other thing is, this is disgusting, but you know that dog poo that's in our street and everyone goes, and all of a sudden it magically disappears? Guess who's cleaned it up?
No way, there's slugs.
Slugs, yeah,
I didn't know
they
that.
love it.
Really?
Absolutely love it, yeah.
Well, you've learnt something already, folks, haven't you? Who knew that? I certainly didn't. Slugs go for your dog poo. What a thought. So do we have, I'm guessing, I know the answer to this one already, but things, and it always gets me whenever you go out doing anything about the Isle of Man's environment and plants and wildflowers and trees, lots of information, lots of databases, birds, megafauna, lots of stuff on that as well. You come down to things like flies, ants, maybe spiders, although there's a good spider group on the island, obviously the 8 legs of man, and then slugs. And generally, there's not much information about just what we've got.
No, there isn't at all. This is why we formed the invertebrate group with the lovely Kate Hawkins and the fantastic Steve Krellin, who are both absolutely fantastic in their fields of knowledge. So Kate does spiders and Steve does flies. And it's just trying to up that knowledge and trying to get people to identify these things. They are important. They're the basis for the whole food chain, the whole food cycle. And they support our ecosystems. They're important to us as well.
So I assume we don't actually have an official record of the species found on the Isle of Man. Do you know off the top of your head how many species you might have identified here since you've been sort of Mrs. Slug?
I've got about 7 to my name. When I started recording them, because there were no species recorded, apart from the ash black slug that was recorded, which is a very rare species, and it indicates ancient woodlands.
It was quite a story, that one, I think.
That was, yes, yeah. It was, and I think people were amazed. It's a huge, great big slug. It packs a punch, really. And if we could find a lemon slug, that would be even better, because that one really does indicate ancient woodlands, whereas the ash black is a bit in between. There's a lot of new records going on, and every time the invertebrate group goes out, we try and record slugs as well.
Brilliant. That's what we like to hear. I think it's just the sort of information you need, really, for future generations. And as you say, seeing what's on the island, and because everything's connected, as we know. We'll have a little paddle around the garden here then, I think, and see what we can see. I do love the fact that, again, you actually did go on a slug ID course. Such a thing exists.
Oh yes, it was really, really exciting weekend, I can assure you. And I had to take some specimens across from the island as well, so they had a beautiful trip across the water.
Of course. And who actually ran it then? There was a slug specialist somewhere in the UK?
There is. His name's Christopher, and he's sort of like the leading expert. So when we get slugs and we try and identify them, we pass our records on to him, and he verifies them, so it means the record is more accurate.
Brilliant. I love it. Okay, let's have a little paddle round and see if we can see it in the garden. It has actually been quite dry of late, so it's, if you're a slug lover, I suppose it's this sort of relatively dry weather we've had for the last week or two probably doesn't help.
No, it doesn't really, and the ground is really quite dry. So we're going to be looking under logs, under stones, underneath leaf litter for them, and hopefully nearer to damper places. This is why I was hoping St John's Garden, with its lovely damp area, would have quite a few slugs around. But there you are, the sun shines.
It's always the way. Right, let's go and see what we can see. We'll go and have a look. There's bound to be something somewhere. You can't possibly come to a garden in the Alabama and not find a slug. Dawn's getting ready for action. Rolling her sleeves up. That's good. I'm going to follow her.
I'm going to go for a stone.
Okay, let's see what we can find.
Go for one under the shade of a tree, because it'll be a lot damper under there rather than in the garden, in the open grassland area.
Okay, right. I'm going to pedal up and
Right.
see if we can find something.
Likely stone. Let's have a go. Ah, yeah.
Aha! Now look at that. You see, bingo, straight away.
So we have two lovely speckled green spotted slugs here with quite a size. I would say they were about 8 centimetres?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah, and a lot of wood lice that are running around. I hope they don't get too close to them, because obviously they're covered in a lot of mucus, and you can see around this slug down here there's a lot of mucus that's coming out. With their slime, what's really interesting, the mucus, they get two different sorts of slime. So they have a very watery one that works from the edge of the foot inwards, and it's very watery and it's got chopped fibres in it, and that's what helps them to climb, because obviously with slime otherwise it's there to help them move and glide, and if they would try to climb up they'd just be squeaking down every 5 minutes. So that mucus is really important to them, but they also produce a second sort of mucus which operates from their head back to their foot, and it's that really sticky one, and that's great for them because they can use it for defence mechanism. So there's a species that use it, and it's quite poisonous for them to eat. And also, the other predators they've got are things like beetles with huge, great big mandibles. Well, they get all gunked up by the mucus, so it's a really good tactic to stop being eaten. I must admit, it puts me off eating them.
Yeah, I think it put me off as well. And there you go. You see, you've learned something else already, hadn't you, folks? 2 different types of mucus from a slug. Who'd have known? I certainly didn't. You know they're very sticky when you see them. You also see, again, this one, as you say, is sort of speckledy green. It's these are the sort I see, I think, at least. If I take the lid off my compost heap, I think I often see these under the lid on my compost heap at home.
Yes, they're very, very common. In fact, this is actually, I know this one to be the green cellar slug, and with this one, the RHS, the Royal Horticultural Society, are running a survey, and they're asking people to report it in. It's very, very good detritivore, so that's why you'll see it in your compost heap. It's there having a good old munch.
And now, just as we've been talking, you've unearthed another one just from the grass by the side of the stone there. Now, is that a young one, or is that something separate and one of the sort of... It's a much smaller one. Is that one of the keeled slugs, or just a young cellar slug?
This is a younger slug, yeah, it's a juvenile. It's not a keeled slug. What this one has, can you see on the mantle? So that's that funny hump that they have. So that funny hump is really important to them. In there, it contains their breathing pore, and it contains their genitalia. And, oops, he's just about to crawl off my finger. I'm just going to redirect him. So you can see on this one, on the mantle, that hump, and it helps keep that moisture in as well, because slugs are actually 80 to 90% water.
Yeah.
So obviously they dry out really, really quickly. So having a mantle actually compacts their surface area and helps them retain that water. But on this particular one, can you see there's 2 lines that are running down?
Yes, I can.
Side. So
just either side
that's part of the diagnostic of it. And this one is actually something called an Iberian 3-banded slug. I know it's only got 2. Don't panic. Slugs can't count. And these, yes, it says Iberian, they have come across. So a lot of slugs have been introduced to the UK from plants, garden centres, and also from bringing salad things across.
Yeah, of course.
And now they're well established in the UK as well.
Wow. See, so three-banded. So is there a third band, or is it just one of those quirky names?
It is. It's because this one's quite young. It is very faintly. You can see right down the middle, so you can see the two lateral,
I can
two
see the
side
lateral
bands.
ones, yeah.
But there is one just, and it's just because he's young and it's just still
Hasn't
developing.
fully
Really,
developed
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Ah.
So you can see as well when the light shines on it. Can you see the very, very bumpy back to it?
Yep.
These are called tubercles, and no one's really sure what they're there for. Yeah. It could be that it helps them retain moisture. It could be it helps them actually move, because by having those dips, it flexes their skin a bit more. But no one's really 100% sure.
Wow. And are they hermaphrodites, or are they male and female slugs?
Hermaphrodites. Very interesting. If you want to spend a happy afternoon on your computer and then probably get banned from the internet, then yes, do please go ahead with it, because it is very interesting.
Yes, it's another one of those things that you never quite get your head around. At least I haven't, and having never studied biology that closely. But yes, that weird thing of having both sexes in one body, as it were, very handy, I suppose, and cuts down on buying lots of drinks. But but look at that. See, that little one's he's quite attractive in his own way, isn't he? The three-banded one.
He certainly is, and he's a very quick mover. Surprisingly, when a predator comes along, the slug's first instinct is to try and run away, which for a slug is not a good idea.
It's not a good
really,
move, is it?
The bigger species, the Aryan species, will then hump up and make themselves quite small, so you'll see themselves pull themselves together, and that has a secondary effect of clamping them down onto the ground, so the predator can't actually pull them off the ground.
Wow. Okay, we're going to pop him back under his stone. Don't tell the gardeners. He's fine. There he goes. That's it.
There we go.
And we'll pop the stone back in place so they don't dry out. And we'll just have another little snifty around here to see what else we can see. So that was a straight hit then. So this is the thing, you don't have to go far in your garden to go and see if you can find a slug or two. There's going to be something somewhere, almost certainly. So let's have a little fertile a bit further up and see. It is quite dry though, it has been dry of late. So, what's the stump there? I can't turn that one over. And it's like all things in nature, if you're looking for something, it's probably hard to find them. If you're not looking for them, you'll no doubt come across them left, right and centre, which is often the way. Stones are always good, or a little rummage under the leaves. I'm going to find another stone, I think.
Sometimes it's worth looking on fungus as well, because they absolutely adore fungus, especially milkcaps and boletes. They go crazy for them.
We were seeing that on a fungi walk the other day on a foray, and of course, yes, Dawn was very keen to look at the slugs, and the rest of them say, "Oh, they're ruining the fungi." Can't please everyone, that's what they say. It's a good time of year, of course, for fungi as well. In fact, speak of the devil, we've got some little.
Can you see here?
Oh yes.
So this is a tree slug that we've got coming up here. The great thing about tracking down slugs, one, they're slow. Two, they leave a slime trail behind, which is absolutely delightful. So here we've got a slime trail heading up the tree, and what it's doing is looking for lichen and moss that it can eat. So they're very interesting slugs, and they actually produce a mucus where they can actually strand it, so they can like parachute down, abseil down.
Yes, yep.
Because unfortunately, if a slug actually dropped out of a tree, it would concuss itself and kill itself.
Get away.
No, it's true.
Who'd have thought? There's another. You see something else you've looked. This is going to be full of information you'll never known before. Who'd have thought that? I must admit, I did assume if a slug just dropped, it would just sort of, uncurl itself and slide away. Yeah.
You'd think they'd bounce, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But no, they don't. No.
Goodness me. Who'd have thought? Fantastic. So you do see them going up the trees there. We'll just paddle around here and see if we can see anything else. And then we'll paddle back and have a look, because there is such a thing as a slug ID book. Yep, I didn't know either, but let's take a look here. There's a little stone. See if we can see anything. Not a lot on that one, other than Parsons' pigs. Aha, got a little something here. There's a little guy in the corner here.
Oh, he's lovely, yes. He's a super, super duper one. So this one, here we go. This one is actually called a dusky slug. They do. Some of them do have quite fantastic names. You can tell, can you see down the side of the body that there's this lighter banding?
Yes, yeah.
So they come out, slugs can vary greatly in colour. It's a bit like looking at a colour chart, a Dulux colour chart. And they can go, especially the big black slug can actually be almost orangey in colour. So it is very, very confusing, slug names. But this one's a particularly delightful one. You can see the tubercles, which are the funny pattern on it. They're quite coarse.
Yeah.
So there is actually a slug called the hedgehog slug, and those tubercles have little tiny points on them, a bit like the hedgehog fungus.
Yep.
That has a little teeth on the gills underneath. Yeah. So
Wow.
he's lovely.
And so is that a young one? Because it's only small. That's only like half an inch or quarter of an inch long.
Yes, it is, and he's it's still got a bit to grow, but it's never going to be one of the massive slugs like the Aryan species. And we've got another one just here,
Oh yes, there is.
which is just,
Is that another cellar slug? Or is that something else?
that's something a little bit different, I think.
Oh yes, it is. I think.
Right. Now he's interesting. I think I'm going to have to take him back and examine him in detail so
Marvellous.
he gets the full treatment.
Lucky him. He'll be pleased. Great. So we'll put one back and we'll take one back to have a look. So, okie dokie. Right. Well, let's not keep him waiting. Then we'll go back because I know you've got, as I just mentioned, there is, and again, who'd have known, I've, over the years, had an observer's book of pretty much everything. I've never seen the observer's book of slugs, and I don't know whether it exists, but there is a slug ID book and relatively recent publication.
It is. It's come out within the last about 5 years, and it's published by the Field Studies Council, who do some fantastic guides for like amateur people who want to get into identifying this sort of thing.
Yeah, like sort of naturalist series. Or
Yes, and it's very usable. It's in a table. It does take a bit of patience because you have to get used to the terminology like anything else, but it is absolutely fantastic help in the field. I highly recommend it.
Right, well, we'll go back to the picnic table, and handily, Dawn's brought a copy with it, so we'll have a look at this little one we brought from the top here and see if we can key him out. Now, I've keyed out fungi before. I've never keyed out slugs. It'd be fascinating. Let's go and take a look. Another top tip we were hearing before, and that if you are going slugging and taking a look at slugs and you do get all the mucus on your hands, wet wipes, or what was the other top tip? Vinegar, was it?
Vinegar in water, yes, it's really good. You smell a bit like a chip shop for a couple of days afterwards, but it does seem to lift it off.
To do it. Okie dokie.
Yes. Obviously don't handle the slugs after you've done that because it will damage them.
Yeah, that's not going to do any good. And here we go. So yeah, slugs of Britain and Ireland, identification, understanding and control. Wonderful. Yeah, who'd have thought? I'd never seen this before. I never knew there was a slug guide going. So we've got that to hand. Very good if you've got some light reading going on. And here we go. Now we've got a couple little ones here. So I can see in this little tub here that Dawn's got, this is your little cellar slug at the top here.
The green cellar slug,
Yeah.
yes. And then we've got the bigger Aryan species with that lovely foot fringe. So that's like an edge that runs all around the foot of the slug. So I love that term, gastropod,
Yes.
which is stomach foot. I just absolutely adore that term. I think it describes them so completely. So the foot fringe is very important. We look for patterns. And on this one, it's very stunningly bright orange, almost like that high-vis jacket.
Yeah.
And you can see lines coming down from it. So when we get a slug to identify it, the first thing we look at the mantle, and we look at the tubercles, and we look at the size and the colour. The other thing that we're looking for are other features, like if it's got a ridge running down its back. We call these keeled slugs. Sometimes they're semi-keeled, so that means that ridge only starts halfway down the body. If it's fully keeled, it goes all the way from the mantle all the way back. And I'm afraid they're the fellas that are trouble in your garden.
Getting your spuds.
Yes, they are, yes, unfortunately. But funny enough, everyone thinks those huge, great big black slugs are the ones that are the troublemakers. They aren't really, because they're the ones that are eating all your dead stuff. When it comes to seedlings, different thing. It's like a sweet shop to any slug. Fair dues, it's all, so I think you just have to say you've got to look after your seedlings. But definitely this thing where everyone kills all the slugs in their garden. You don't need to. Some of them are actually a bit more of your friend. And definitely if you've got the leopard slug, how fantastic a name is that, then that's your friend because it eats other slugs.
Wow, yes, a sort of a carnivorous slug. And I suppose this one, so this is the Aryan, so this is the sort of classic to my mind, people might see in their garden every day, the brown one with, as you say, that striking bright orange fringe around the bottom. It's the one you do see quite often in gardens up and down the country.
Yes, it is, and it does come in a lot of different colours. So there's actually Arianata, which I love, the binomial name, which is the large black slug, and then there's one that comes more orangey, so they can be quite stunningly orange, actually quite vivid, and they're Arian rufus. They're the large red slug, and they're very, very common, especially if you walk through woodlands. So like in the Curraghs, they're the most common slug that's out in the Curraghs.
Okie dokie. And so on the pages there, like I said, it is fascinating because you have actually got colour pictures of the actual slugs that you're looking for, but then we have things like this, like a colour charts on quite a few of them as well, rather like you might find again in spore prints in your fungi books, or if you're buying some paint for your wallpaper, that sort of thing, or for your walls rather. And then also, as you were saying, the various ideas of looking at the mantles, looking at the back, looking at the, what are they, tubercles,
yes, yeah, and the air holes, whether they've got a dark rim to them or not, that's something else that we would look for. We also look at the sole, so we turn the slug over and we look to see if there's a stripe down the middle of the foot or not, or if there's any of the lines that extend from the fringe onto the sole of the foot. And we also look for the mucus, which is a lovely job because mucus comes in lots of different colours.
How pleased are you? So that little hole, yeah, again, so that little hole is a breathing hole, the one you see at the top. It almost looks like someone's burnt it with the end of a cigarette or something, but that is actually the breathing hole. It
is, and it's always on the right side because slugs actually evolved from snails. Everyone thinks it's the other way around, but it isn't. Yeah. So the advantage of being a slug is without having that shell, you can squeeze into little crevices and hide away. But it also means you're more likely to dry out because you haven't got something to retreat in and you haven't got that protection. There are such things as shelled slugs, so they've got a little residual shell right on the end of their bottom, which looks like a little bustle, I think.
It does, doesn't it? I don't think I've ever seen one of those. I mean, if you said shelled slug to most people, they'd instantly think it was a snail, but this is something with just a bit of residual shell left, but otherwise it's fairly slug-like. You get these over here? Do you get shelled ones here?
I haven't personally seen one, but that's not to say there aren't any out there. They've just not been found yet. Yeah.
Well, there's a challenge for everyone. If you find a slug with a residual shell on the back, let you know, I suppose. You'd be interested.
Yes, I would be very interested. Take loads of photos because to us, we can then verify. So what we need with slugs is we need a photograph on the side, the top. If you can bear it, turn it over and take a photograph of the sole of the slug as well. So it's like a full photo shoot workout that we need.
What a thought. So our little chap we picked up there before then, what do we think? Have we got any clues as to where we might be placing him in the world of slug IDs?
What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to double check that he doesn't have any sort of keel on him. And what I do is I use my phone and I use the camera on my phone just to enlarge it. I do have hand lenses, but a lot of people find it very disconcerting to be nose almost touching a slug. So I found the camera a little bit better. So you can see it looks almost like a ridge down there, but I don't think it is. No. It's not high enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to rule out keeled slugs, and it's certainly not one of the Aryan species because it's not got that distinct hump shape. So we'll go past the Aryan pages and then past the keeled slugs. Okay, so now these are ones without keels. They're not the same humped shape to them, and he's got very, very distinctive markings on him. So it's very, you can see it's almost like spots and smutty marks on him. And on the mantle, it looks almost like lines
Yeah.
going down it. So what we need to have a little look at, if we look down here, is one that might look a little bit similar. So you just have to flip over a couple of pages as well. So, can you see here? This is the one that as it's going over my finger, it feels more like water than a sticky mucus. So if you look, it describes it as mucus, colourless. It's certainly not leaving any mark on me.
No.
Watery and copious when handled. Certainly my fingers get very wet here.
There's a lot of it.
And also, it gives you a bit of a clue here. It says mainly in wilder habitats, including woods, which we've got here.
Yeah.
And we found it in sort of a more wooded area. So you can see it's got a whole range of colours. It has, it says a pale keel. And we were looking, weren't we, to see whether that was a keel or not. It does look very faint. So I think maybe this is the one that we're looking at. Yeah.
Wow.
So if we look at page 74, it might give us a name that we can get a handle on, because sometimes binomial names are a bit of a
mouthful,
aren't they? Yes. So here, there we go. Guess who we've got here? Our tree slug.
Hey.
So we found him. What he was doing on the ground, I don't know. He was a bit lost. But also, what's handy about this book as well, it's always reassuring to see that there's a distribution already found in the Isle of Man, so that's quite good. So that's the little fella that leaves all those lines
up the tree.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. He's obviously come back down again. Happily, he hadn't dropped down and concussed himself. He was
Yes. It makes a lot of sense that it's got very watery mucus, because that's the one with the fibres in that helps them to climb up surfaces.
That's fantastic.
There we go.
Amazing.
Back.
Well, what a fantastic little glimpse into the world of slugs. I mean, it's. I always get amazed, like as we were saying at the beginning of this little talk, that there are worlds out there which are barely known, particularly when it comes to things like ants, invertebrates, your flies, slugs, and such like, because they're not the sort of thing that most people just don't give them a second glance, do they? That's the whole thing. They just think, oh, it's a pest, not interested, boom, and they're instantly either killed or forgotten, and that's it.
Yes, and it's such a shame. Just looking in this tub, you can see that the markings on them are incredible, the variety. They're just, actually, the more you get to look at them, the more beautiful they actually are. It's very hard to say that. I think most people, like you say, just sort of like get rid of them really quickly. As regards to pests in your garden and managing them, barriers, the biggest problem with slugs in your garden are the soil slugs. So even if you put pellets down, whatever, it doesn't make any difference, because they're going through the soil and underneath those slug pellets. So they really make no difference whatsoever. I mean, I'm very heavily against the use of slug pellets anyway, because it gets into the food chain.
Yeah, I think it's not smiled on these days, really.
No, it's not really. So the alternatives you've got are to try and choose species of plant that are slug resistant. Like if you grow potatoes, go for early crop and go for kestrel potato. If you like your hostas, go for the more blue leaf ones. The slugs will still have a go at them, because hostas are like manna from heaven for slugs, but they won't be as bad. The other thing, you can try slug pubs. I always think that's a nice way to go.
I confess I use the odd slug pub.
Yes, I've used it though as well.
On exactly the same basis. If you've got to go, seems at least you'll go out very happy.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the way I look at it as well. But then you can use things like barriers, you can use the copper tape. But the only thing with the copper tape is when it oxidises, it's no good. So you have to keep going out and cleaning that tape. Yes, exactly, yes.
I love it.
Heck, he's on a run.
Polish your slug wall. That's the way to do it. Well, yeah, there's a few things you can actually do there. Or, of course, you can do the obvious and go out and just, as I do, pick them off and throw them somewhere else.
Yes. Over the neighbour's fence.
Didn't hear that, anyone.
Or just use the natural thing and try and encourage hedgehogs. Frogs are another thing that are going to eat them. Beetles, so if you've got piles of leaves and, brash, which are twiggy bits, they're just fantastic. Let nature look after it for you.
Marvellous. Well, look, we're all going to be looking at slugs in a slightly different light. So, if anyone's out and about again, if we see a shelled slug. So you see a slug with a little bit of remnant shell on, that's quite unusual. Let Dawn know, she'd be interested to know. And you mentioned what was the one you were saying before? The lemon slug, was that? So that would be
well, I think the whole international press would come running over for that one.
Really?
Because they are a key indicator for ancient woodland, and they are incredibly rare. Yeah.
Wow. And I don't suppose, having sounded it's quite confusing, you're going to tell me now that the lemon slug isn't actually lemon coloured at all.
It actually is.
Oh, it is?
It is, yes. Yeah. A rarity in the slug world.
Oh, great. Let's have a quick look then, and then so we can just let people know if by any freak chance you're out and about and saw something really unusual. And who knows, it does happen, the ash grey slug. We do sometimes get unusual sightings, so if we've stirred your slug interest, then there might be... Oh, gosh. Okay, so the lemon slug, he is very lemon coloured.
Lemony, yes. Isn't
Very
that
lemony.
just so beautiful? And you can see on the distribution map, there's none on the island.
No, but they are in the northwest.
Yes, so you don't know, they could be out there.
Yeah, there's no... I assume there's no evidence to say why they shouldn't be here, albeit there's no evidence at the moment to say there is.
Exactly. You could be the first one to find one.
There you go, you see. Marvellous. Thanks, Tom. We'll enjoy that. We'll look at a slug in a different light.
That's good. Go out there and hug them. Hug a slug today. Look at them all now. They're all like, "Have you had enough now?"
That's it, we're off.